Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Polk, and you're listening to the Glory Days Podcast. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Polk, and welcome into Glory Days Podcast. This is podcast number 4. It is a podcast about baseball, the history of baseball, past, present, and future we'll talk about. Also, the role that Cleveland played in baseball history. We talked a few weeks ago about all the amateur games going on, different things. So we'll touch base on a lot of different things. A couple places you could catch the podcast. You could go to YouTube and put in Glory Days Podcast Baseball, and it'll pop up there. You can also catch it on KeeOnSports.com. That's KEE on sports.com. So a few weeks ago, one of our other podcasts, we talked about the top players from 1900 to 1940, and I mentioned five players back from that era. Let's go through them real quick. And the 5 players that I chose were Honus Wagner, Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Roger Hornsby, and Lou Gehrig. So you think about those 5 players. I gave a lot of statistics. Boy, how would you like to start a ball team with those 5 players? Well, today we're going to spend a little bit of time, and we're going to talk about some top players from 1940 to 1980 in that era. Now, by no means are these the top 5 players of that time. These are top 5 players that I picked, that I was interested in, and thought gave a lot to the game during that time period. So talking about 1940 to 1980, you think of 1940, it's the dawn of World War II, and there was quite a few players. There was 37 in all that either volunteered or were drafted into the service. So a lot of those players lost a couple years on their careers, which as you'll see, they already have some huge numbers. But imagine what they would have had if they would have been here playing ball. But of course, what they did was much more important. Like they said, it was the greatest generation at the time that saved the world. So it was very important. So anyway, here's some of the players. Like I said, there was 37 in all. Some of the players that volunteered or were drafted into the service during World War II. Our own players we had Bob Feller, Bob Lemon, of course, 2 top pitchers for the Cleveland Indians. We also had Larry Doby, who played here in Cleveland, Hank Greenberg, Yogi Berra of the Yankees, Ted Williams, Stan the Man Musial. He was also one of the ones that volunteered. And then there was also some baseball executives, and you might remember this name from your youth, Nestor Shilak. He was an umpire. There was him and another umpire also volunteered for the service. So anyway, let's kind of get into what's going on during that time period. Also during that time, a lot of people, they were buckling down. All the men were off to war, so the women had to pick up the slack. They were working, they were contributing. They were taking care of the family, basically. So there was not a lot of extra income for people to go see baseball games and do those kind of things. So actually in 1943, the owner of the Chicago Cubs at the time, Phil Wrigley, of course, Wrigley Field, it's named after him, he started an All-American Girls Pro Baseball League. So that lasted for about 12 years, started in 1943. They fielded 4 teams, and they had tryouts in Chicago. So there was 60 spots open, and over 280 ladies showed up to try out for it. So 60 of them made it, and of course that was a lot of entertainment. They were inexpensive. People would go, and it would kind of keep people interested in baseball, get their mind off the war and the work they had to do during the day and things. So it was very important to have that. In a podcast coming up later on, we'll have a whole podcast just about the women in baseball and the contribution that they made. And also, if you'll remember, Probably one of the best baseball movies of all time, I think. It was definitely up there on the list. It inspired League of Their Own, which was a movie that was out in 1992. Still a great movie to this day. Tom Hanks is the manager. A lot of good Gina Davis in there. Madonna's in there. Rosie O'Donnell. So great baseball flick if you want to check that out. League of Their Own, 1992. Okay, let's get into the players that I believe they were top 5 players of that era. Like I said, there's other ones you may agree, you may disagree. That's fine. That's what this is all about. So let's start with number 5 and go up to the number 1 player in my opinion. So anyway, at number 5, I have Hank Aaron. Of course, Hammer and Hank was his nickname. He played for 23 years. He started in 1954 and played until 1976. Of course, he's in the Hall of Fame. He was 6 foot tall, 180 pounds. He had 2 years in the World Series that he played in, and during those 2 years, he batted .364. But of course, Hank Aaron was known mostly for his home runs. Of course, he broke Babe Ruth's home run record of 714 when he hit his 715th in April of, I believe it was 1973. But he was a pitcher of consistency, Hank Aaron for sure. He had a .305 batting average. He had 2,297 RBIs, which was number 1 on the list at the time. He was also number 2 in runs scored, 2,174. Of course, he ended his career, he had 755 home runs, which stood until Barry Bonds got to that record. But we'll talk about that in the next year, what I think about that. So anyway, games played. He played 3,298 games, had over 12,000 at-bats. He also hammered out 624 doubles, and he was a pretty good defensive outfielder, and he was very quick. He had 240 stolen bases. He led the league in doubles 4 times, led the league in home runs 4 times, and he also led the league in RBIs 4 times. So that's my number 5 pick for that era. Let's go to number 4, Mickey Mantle, the Mick. This guy, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1984. He was 5'11", about 195 pounds. He played in the World Series 12 different times. He had 18 home runs in the World Series. He ranks as number 1 in home runs. Number 1 in runs scored at 42 and in RBIs at 40. So let's talk a little bit about his career. He started in 1951. Played until 1968, so 18 years in the league. He was a 5-tool player. He had 153 steals. He could run, hit, field, throw. He had it all, especially in his younger days before he hurt his knees and everything. There's Bob Zimmer coming in. Bob, we're just talking about the great players from 1940 to 1980, talking about Mickey Mantle. We'll go on with him. He ended up his career, he had a .298 batting average, 536 home runs, 1,734 walks. That's amazing. He led the league in home runs 4 times, also led the league in runs scored 6 times. One of his best years I want to focus on just for a minute. 1956, he won the Triple Crown that year. Of course, that's leading the league in hitting, average, and home runs. 1956, he had 52 home runs, scored 132 runs, 130 RBIs, and a .353 batting average. So that's some amazing numbers there. So that's Mickey Mantle, number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list from that era, Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid. He was 5'10", about 170 pounds. He played in the World Series 4 different years. Willie Mays, mostly known as a center fielder for San Francisco, played for the Mets a little bit at the end of his career. He started in 1951 and played until 1973, so 22 years. He had a .302 lifetime batting average, scored over 2,000 runs, had over 1,900 RBIs, over 2,000 runs, and he ended his career with 660 home runs. He was inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame in 1979. He also, which you don't think too much of it because a lot of that's gone away in the game today. There's not much running as there was back then. But he had 338 stolen bases. He also led the league 3 times in triples, 4 times in home runs, and 10 times in his career he batted over 300 for the season. Like I said, he had a 302 lifetime batting average. So I kind of remember him as I was a teenager. Really fun to watch, even though he's at his end of his career. He was always a big draw for all the fans. Let's go on to number 2. Number 2 on my list is Stan Musial, played for the St. Louis Cardinals, outfielder, first baseman. Like I said before, he was one of the players that lost some time in the service. He volunteered for World War II. He was a 6-footer, about 175 pounds. He played in the World Series 4 years. Now, he has some amazing statistics. That's why he's number 2 on my list. He had a .331 lifetime batting average, 3,630 hits, 725 doubles. He had 6 years out of the time that he was playing that he had over 200 hits. So he was the model of consistency for sure. And then he had 17 straight years where he batted over 300. Can you imagine that? 17 years batting over 300. That's an amazing run for sure. And he led the league in hits 6 times, doubles 8 times, triples 5 times. And he only struck out 696 times in almost 11,000 at-bats. Good eye at the plate, good bat man, could always get the bat on the ball. He played from 1941 to 1963, so 22 years. Like I said, he missed a little bit of time when he was in the service. And also, he amassed almost 1,600 walks. So pretty amazing numbers from Stan Musial for sure. Okay, let's go to the number 1 player on my list from the 1940s to 1980 era. So anyway, my number 1 player is Ted Williams of Boston, an outfielder. He actually missed 3 years in World War II. He was a big guy for the era. He was 6'3", 205 pounds. Unfortunately, he only got into the World Series 1 year. But he was the last man to hit 400. And he hit 406 in 1941. And I kind of remember the story. I'm not exactly positive on it, but I believe he was batting just a tick over 400, like 400.2 on the last day of the season. And, of course, they offered for him to sit out so he could finish the season at the 400 mark. Well, anyway, it was a doubleheader that day, and he said, there's no way I'm sitting out. He was a gamer. He wanted to play all the time, so it was a doubleheader that day. If memory serves me, I'm not positive. I think he went either 5 for 8 or 6 for 8, and that's how he ended up with the 406 batting average. I'll tell you what, no ego there with that guy. He just went out there and did it. So let's talk about his batting average for a lifetime. His lifetime batting average, 344. He played for 19 seasons, 1939 up till 1960. And he batted over 300 18 out of 19 years. 18 out of 19 years over 300. So that's crazy. Oh, of course, and that 344 lifetime batting average is the 6th best of all time. So he had 1,839 RBIs, drew a ton of walks, over 2,019 walks. He was number 2 in that. And if they would have had the Triple Crown back then, he would have won it in 42 and 47 because he led the league in those categories. He led the league 4 times in home runs, 8 times in walks, 4 times in RBIs, and 6 times in runs scored. His best season, let's talk about 1941. Okay, he had a 4. That's the year he batted .406. He had 37 home runs, scored 135 runs, and to add to that, he had 145 walks. And he was number one in all of those categories for sure. And he had a slugging average of .735. So that's my number one player from the era of 1940 to 1980. There's a lot of players, of course, great players during that era that got left off the list. But these are the ones that I kind of researched a little bit and remembered. And it's always fun to look back at that era. Sometime later on in one of our other podcasts, we're going to go from 1980 up until the present day. That's going to be a tough one with the steroid era, so we'll have to pick and choose to see who we include on that. But anyway, it was a great era of baseball for sure. And somebody that didn't make my list, and I was looking through the baseball encyclopedia here, which is where I get a lot of my information. I just wanted to mention him real quick because I was looking over his statistics, and he had a great run in the World Series. And he was Yogi Berra, catcher for the Yankees. Of course, we remember Yogi Berra for all his one-liners, the Yogiisms, it ain't over till it's over, and all kinds of different things. Anyway, Yogi Berra, he played 14 years in the World Series. 14 years out of the 19 years that he played, he was in the World Series. So it just shows you how dominant the Yankees were during the late 40s all the way through the 50s. So anyway, he played 75 games, which is in the World Series, which is first all time. He had over 250 at bats, first all time. First all time in hits, he had 71 hits in the World Series, and first all time he's had 10 doubles. He was third in home runs. He had 12 home runs, and also second in runs scored at 41, second in RBIs at 39, and he was third in walks at 32. So he also played outfield a little bit, but primarily he was a catcher. So to have those kind of statistics and that longevity being behind the plate, that's really pretty amazing. You'd think he went to the World Series 14 out of 19 years. And, back then, same as today, I mean, catchers have a lot to do with the game. They're calling the game, pitches. So they have a lot to do with the success. So pretty amazing record also from Yogi Berra. So anyway, that's the players that I chose. I'm sure you have your favorites. If you get a chance, pick up a baseball encyclopedia. It's got the history all the way for even if somebody only had one appearance or one at bat, their name is in there. So I'm actually going to have to pick up an updated book because this is one only goes up to 1980, and you can already see it's about a 3-inch volume there. So anyway, like I mentioned before, the podcast is Glory Days. We're coming here today from the Baseball Heritage Museum on 66 in Lexington, the initial home of the Cleveland Indians, the Spiders, the Naps. This is where they were all played. Today we're upstairs, kind of in the archive room. So if you come to the museum more than once, you're not going to see the same things. They switch things out all the time. So a lot of great things up here to look at. Margaret just walked in. Say hi to her. And she's one of the ones that helps run the museum. And before we leave today, stick around. I'm going to have a little 2-minute clip, kind of show you some of the archives up here of things that kind of go in and out of the museum. So if you get a chance, definitely stop over here. Real quick, too, I want to make a shout out to a friend of mine that's a fellow umpire. Her name is Kelly Dine, and I just read a great story about her yesterday on Cleveland.com. So check it out. She is an umpire, and she has been selected as one of the 16 umpires. She's going to umpire in the Little League World Series. So she's going to be the only female umpire there this year. 16 of them. A great story about her, about how she started out. She's a mother. She's a nurse. She's a teacher. She served in the military. Great story of how she got to where she is today. So Kelly, congratulations on that. We'll be looking forward to seeing you in the next couple weeks on TV. So, great little story for sure. Let's take a few minutes to talk about some of the upcoming events that are going on here at League Park. There's events going on here at all the time, so it's not just a museum. Come and see the park. It was renovated in 2014. Cleveland put over $6 million in it. Going along with our theme of one of our other podcasts about amateur baseball. Cleveland really putting their money where their mouth is as far as that's concerned. They have Talty Field down at Brookside Park that they just redid, all new turf and everything. I'm going to head over there in the next couple weeks and check that out, and I'll let you know what's going on there. Here is some of the upcoming events happening here at the Baseball Heritage Museum. On Saturday, August 10th at 1 o'clock, you can meet the author of the Rocky Colavito story, Cleveland's Iconic Slugger. They just had big events here during the All-Star Weekend with Rocky Colavito and the author Mark Summer. So check him out at 1 o'clock, Saturday, August 10th. It's a free event. Check out the museum. And so there's a few other events going on. Sunday, August 24th. They're going to have a celebration here from 1 to 4 o'clock. They celebrate the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the historic marker. This has been put on the historic list of Ohio places to see. So definitely check that out. Okay, and then there's also, this looks kind of interesting. This is Saturday, September 14th at 1 o'clock. Mrs. Morehard and the Boys. Author Ruth Reed Morehard. She'll share the incredible stories of women who started the first boys baseball league. And then also some coming attractions for later in September. Babe Ruth is Missing, the Black Sox Scandal in October, and also Boo at the Museum. So all these events are free. We'd like to thank the Cleveland Arts and Culture for their support in this. So make sure you get out to the Baseball Heritage Museum, check out some of these events. And I'd like to thank you for listening to the podcast today. And when you're there, check out my other 3 podcasts. You just click on them. You can go back to the archives and check those out. And remember our podcast, you can get it here. You can get it on YouTube. Just go to Glory Days Podcast /baseball, and it'll pop right up. You can check them all out. Or go to keeonsports.com. That's KEE on sports.com. Started by Vince McGee as a local author. You can see we have some of his books here. Heroes, Cleveland's Finest, wrote a book on Jacobs Field. He's an author, and we hope to have him here sometime later in the year talking about some of his books. So again, I'd like to thank you for stopping in. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Glory Days podcast about baseball. So join us next time. Thanks and see you later. And don't forget, stick around for a little 2-minute clip of what's going on in the archives at the Baseball Heritage Museum. Welcome back, everybody. And as promised, here's a behind-the-scenes look of some of the things that you could see at the Baseball Heritage Museum at League Park. Here's a photo of fans waiting to get in at the park. They also have a big exhibit going on right now of the girls of the game, girls of baseball, all kinds of different exhibits. Here is a uniform from the Cleveland Buckeyes, from the Negro Leagues. They were the world champions in 1945. Also, as we go around, here is a pretty cool picture of Satchel Paige and Larry Doby. Right next to that, we have a radio that would have been used in the 20s and 30s. That's how most people got their games. So a lot of different things going on. Here's a pretty cool banner from League Park. They had a League Park Day at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. And then here's an overhead shot of League Park back in the day. So a lot of things to see and do here. So you may want to stop by sometime. Here's also a home plate that was here at League Park, signed by a bunch of different people that played back in the day. Stopping over, big exhibit for Bob Feller. So stop at the park, check it out. There's always something new and going on. They're filtering different archives in and out of here. Here's a great picture of the League Park. People lining up to get ready for the game. So come on out here, look around. History all over the place. And remember, it's an unbelievable price to be a member here. It's only $25 for an individual or $35 for an entire family. So get out here to League Park and enjoy it. Thank you for listening to Glory Days Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.